All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's Friday. It's the free-for-all, though I'm not calling it a free-for-all as much as I used to, at least not in my the little thumbnails I put together for you, because I understand it doesn't generate as many clicks as if I give you a more specific topic, maybe with a picture of somebody you recognize in it. So I'm kind of moving away from the free-for-all in my marketing of my live stream on Fridays. But it's still a free-for-all. It's still your opportunity to call in. You don't always have that opportunity. 240-242-5646. It's at Halitics on YouTube. And I'd love to talk to you today. As you can see, and by the way, I'll show you the thumbnail I'm actually using in a moment, but I always do center. I mean, I hope I don't have to always center. I hope at some point we get beyond killing Palestinians. I hope at some point Israel refrains from its genocidal atrocities against the Palestinian people. I hope at some point those responsible for it, for killing over 36,000. Now, I think we're hard on 37,000 the death toll. Over 300 this week. I'll show you the numbers daily because it's so horrifying, horrible. But there's an image. This is from Al Jazeera from maybe an hour ago. I clipped this off the news feed there. 60 more killed this past 24 hours. You can see there's an explosion there. This is downtown Rafah. I know. Remember, what was the argument by John Kirby from the State Department and also the Secretary Blinken? Well, we don't know. They're not really engaged in kind of street warfare. It's not downtown Rafah. We don't want them. We trust the process. Let Israel do its own investigations. If they're telling us that they're not really engaged in a ground operation in Rafah, then, we'll take their word for it. And even Simone Sanders, I can't remember where I saw this. Was it? I don't like to take information from other live streamers, other YouTubers, without crediting them. So maybe this was Crystal. I think Crystal Ball. I say that my favorite is Brianna Joy Gray, and I will play some of her video with John Nichols. I think it was on yesterday, I believe. I watched it yesterday. I think it was posted yesterday as well. So we'll get to that in a little bit. That's called, what is it? Bad Faith, right? Bad Faith podcast. And I also watch Crystal Ball and Sagar. I think they do a pretty good job on breaking points. I think I'm the best, obviously. That's why I do it. But they're pretty good. They have their flaws, their foibles, their mistakes. They're sometimes a little too establishment, especially Crystal Ball. But and Brianna Joy's a little woke, which I'm not crazy about either. She's kind of backing away from that because under sustained pressure from Robbie. I think she's having trouble in her own mind justifying the wokeism. There's an interesting conversation there she had yesterday. Also, I'll just promote this real quick, other channel, but I'm really interested in the affirmative action and the way it's hurts Asian applicants especially. There's a really good debate about that in yesterday's The Hill Rising, so you may want to check that out. It's not even a debate; they pretty much agreed. So it was kind of interesting though, because it shows I think that Brianna's moving away from peak wokeism, which is kind of a nice thing. Again, I don't think colleges and universities should be in the business of deciding whom to accept based on the color of their skin, the ethnicity of the applicant. They should accept people based on what they've achieved in high school and what their likely aptitude is when it comes to the future. So what they may be able to accomplish going forward. That to me should be the decision by the college. That should make the decision. But because we all have different capabilities, we all have different skill sets, we all have different abilities to focus and to work hard and to do what we're told, which is kind of how you make it in America today, right? You work really hard, you're good at it, and you do what you're told. And, some of us can do that and others can't. So I don't think your quality of your life should be based solely on how good you are at taking orders and implementing them, or maybe giving orders if you're in a position to do that. That shouldn't determine whether you have health care. That shouldn't determine whether you have enough to eat. That shouldn't determine whether you have a house. Maybe that should determine whether you live in a bigger house, not an enormous mansion, because really no one should live too large, but a bigger house, right? Or eat in nicer restaurants. But it won't determine whether you have enough. So that's what this program's all about. 240-242-5646. So often I feel like I'm just, getting nowhere. No one's listening. Or to the extent they're listening, I don't get anywhere. And I'll show you some comments, because really I do this because I'm hoping, I say I want to have a dialogue, I want to have a discussion. I will listen to you, but I also want, and I expect, and it has to be a two-way street. You have to listen to me. So often I feel like the points I make are so clear-cut, so obvious, and yet people don't take them to heart. And I see that over and over and over again. All right, 60 dead yesterday in Rafah, Israel. The Israeli killing machine grinds on, grinding Palestinians, grinding Gazans into little bits. It's ugly, it's awful, it's horrific. And yet many still are defending it, or trying to come up with some excuses or explanations, or, well, Israel was attacked, or Israel gets to defend itself, or this. No, they're wiping these people, a group, an identifiable group of people, they're wiping them off the planet. It's just what they're doing. This is the death toll just from this week. So, and I go to Thursday because obviously we're talking about the past 24 hours. So it's not through Friday. It's through the end of Thursday, or through part of today, fiscal day, what have you. I did the math. What did I say? Close to 300. It's just terrible. It's heartbreaking. It's horrifying. It's awful. And if you have any answers, if you have any way to solve this, to stop this, let me know. I'd love to discuss that. What can we do? 240-242-5646 to stop it. And one of my little answers is, well, you can't vote for Joe Biden. You just can't. He is complicit. We talk about the Holocaust as like the worst. Jews say this is the worst thing humans have ever done. Look, I don't like to compare. There are lots of really, really terrible things that people have done to each other. The transatlantic slave trade wasn't a genocide because the Europeans and the white North Americans didn't want to wipe black people off the face of the planet. They wanted them to be as cheap labor as labor can be. So that wasn't genocide, but is it? I don't know the number of dead, or 12, I don't know what it is. 20 million, 50 million, 100 million? We don't know. But it, I believe, dwarfs the Holocaust over a longer period of time. Is one worse than the other? I'm not going to say that. Eradicating indigenous peoples? Is that worse than the Holocaust? I don't know. These are, people do the most awful things to each other. And right now, what we're seeing in Israel is, in Gaza by Israel is at that level. And we are complicit. Our government is supporting it. Our weapons are killing Palestinians. Our weapons are being used to suppress, repress, persecute, oppress Palestinians. And this isn't some kind of a anomaly for the United States. We're torturers. I was like astounded. Where did I read who was it? Oh, yes, on that show, The Hill, also, Robbie Suave arguing, well, it's not the same, his co-host, Jessica Burbank, I believe it wasn't, Brianna Joy Gray, was making the point that the International Court of Justice has been kind of mocked, right? Sardonically mocked, bitterly mocked in the global South, because its focus has tended to be, although now it has issued the indictments for Bibi and Yoav Gallant in Israel, but generally the only people the ICJ will target, will indict, are dictators in the global South, tyrants, people who kill in Africa generally. And Rabi Swabi's point, which I don't totally disregard, was, well, but they're bad people, right? Like Robert Mugabe is a really bad person. I don't really know the names of who they've actually indicted. Papa Doc was a really bad person in Haiti. They did terrible, terrible things. And the response from Burbank was, well, these people set themselves up as dictators, but you have English monarchs who did awful things. The King of Belgium, Leopold, was responsible for mass slaughter in Belgium, 120 years ago. So, how come yes, really bad people in the global South, why isn't there a similar focus on the really bad people in the global North? And Suave responds, well, yes, kings in England did really bad things, but not right now. They're not doing really terrible things right now. And so that's the distinction. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I'll give you that one, because I'm not aware of any murders committed by QE2 or King Charles. But what about the U.S. government's torture in Abu Ghraib? What about the dark site at Gitmo? Those are incredible crimes. They're crimes. And yet, nobody said boo, right? So I don't accept that the reason the ICJ in the past has gone after tyrants in the South, meaning Africa, undeveloped countries that are, poor, exploited, impoverished. I don't buy the argument that that's because that's where the really bad people are. Yes, they are really bad people there. There's really bad people here. And they're the ones getting away with murder. Okay, the big news, and here is your Halitics for today, and we call it a thumbnail. I think that's the official term on YouTube for this. There's your official Halitics thumbnail for the day, Trump convicted. And by the way, I try to do my own graphics as much as I possibly can. Obviously, I can't take the picture of Trump. I don't know Trump. I took that from The Guardian. So you see the attribution of The Guardian in the bottom right as you're looking at your screen. The font, I actually was able to put that convicted together because I saw some stamps that say convicted online. I was thinking, well, should I get one of those? But, it's kind of a little bit like you're not supposed to do that. They all had some kind of watermarks or things on them, and I didn't really want to take that. So I actually was able to create that myself. I'm really trying to up my graphics game, which is something I like about doing these live streams because there's lots of balls in the air, lots of juggling, which I like. So there it is, convicted, 34 counts. And my question for the day, will it matter? If you have thoughts, will it matter? In other words, will voters be less inclined in sufficient numbers to elect Joe Biden? Will they be less inclined to vote for Donald Trump? So that's the question, 240-242-5646. And I think, there's a good chance the answer is yes. Now, I'm not giddy. I'm not optimistic. I'm not pleased about this. I don't want I don't want Joe Biden to be reelected. I really, really don't. I was kind of saying to myself, I want to be really, really honest. Do you want, Hal, in your heart of hearts, do you want Donald Trump to win the election? And I can't say that I do. I don't. No. In fact, I was thinking about that even back in 2016. I did not vote for Hillary. I thought she would be an awful president. I was very, very clear that I thought she was the wrong person for the job. Not because she's a woman, not for anything except her policies are terrible. We're awful. Well, and also her character, dishonest, clearly, not somebody of any real integrity whatsoever, a phony. So I thought she'd be an awful president, but you know what? And I didn't vote for her. And I wasn't like, oh no, she's losing, because I had actually worked the polls that day. I remember walking home from the polling place where I had put in my 12-hour shift, right, from 7, well, it was really like 13 hours, from 7 or 6:30 to 8:30. So 14-hour shift that day at the Maryland polls. I think we closed at 8, and by the time I got out of there, it was 8:30. I was there at 6:30 to open them up at 7. So I was there for 14 friggin' hours. I'm walking home from the polling place, and I was like, I turn on I guess my phone at that point did have a radio, or it must have been my phone with a little, CNN feed or something. Even in 2016, they had them. And I turned it on, and I was like expecting to hear that Hillary had clinched, because the polls did show. Now, I wasn't certain of this. In fact, I was more doubtful than some. But there was some Princeton guy who said, well, I'll eat a bug if Hillary doesn't win. And even, Silver said Trump should lose. And I turned on, this radio thing I had, or whatever, cell phone or mobile or whatever. And it said, their races weren't called. Yeah, I guess Alabama was called. Maybe Massachusetts was called. But, Virginia wasn't called. Florida was definitely not called. And not only that, but they were saying, the results aren't really looking so great for Secretary Clinton. So I remember thinking, okay, fine. I wasn't upset. I wasn't like, oh no, we can't have Trump. Oh no. I wasn't like that, but I wasn't like, oh great either. I was like, oh, all right, whatever. I wasn't pleased. I wasn't upset. In the end, I think I was more disappointed than I was happy. I really would have, I didn't want Trump. I think I didn't want Trump even more than I didn't want Hillary in 2016. And I would have said until January 6th, that was fine, right? I mean, Trump was really bad, but I would be like, well, there were some things he did that probably weren't as bad as what Hillary would have done. So yeah, I'm fine with that. Now I'm like, okay, well, January 6th is really bad. Probably should have supported. Not that I should have supported Hillary, but I was right, and I'm glad I didn't, but I was right not to prefer Trump or think he would have been less bad. He was maybe worse than Hillary. And that's kind of where I am right now. As bad as I think Biden is, I think Trump would be a little worse. That said, there's a side of me that's like, we need to defeat the Democrat. The Democratic Party is the only real hope. As much as I want us to move en masse to the Green Party, as much as I believe that has to happen, I think in the end, the real possibility for reform, for solving our nation's problems, is if the Democratic Party transforms itself, right? And I think the only way that can happen is if they lose races. So I'm not saying you should vote for the Democrats because the Greens can't win. I'm saying you should vote for the Greens because only if the Democrats lose and keep losing and maybe make a decision, a calculated decision that we, the leaders of the party, are better off giving the American public a better deal, taking a little less from them, guaranteeing them enough. I think that's the only way we're, stopping our warmongering. I think that's the way we may have hope for a future. So that side of me says I hope Trump wins, because if Biden loses, maybe there'll be some kind of epiphany. As long as the Democratic Party wins, it's not changing. And as long as it wins, a lot of you aren't going to change either. I was thinking of the old John Madden expression, winning is a great deodorant. And what he was saying is, like, teams. They may do all sorts of things really badly. They may stink. They may be corrupt. They may pick, they may abuse their players, right, on the college level. You could have, like, at Penn State, Joe Paterno, pretty much still revered in many circles, despite the fact that he had a pedophile who for decades was molesting young males who were going to Penn State for football camp and the like. And this guy was on the, Joe Pa knew this, right? And he's still revered in some circles because he won. So no matter how much I point out, we're complicit in genocide. Barack Obama droned, he killed, he executed American citizens without any process whatsoever. He proposed cuts to Social Security payments. Obama and then Biden after Trump both set new records for oil and gas drilling, which at a time when we're burning our planet, we're turning it into a dirty gray ashtray because of our fossil fuel consumption. And yet Obama's revered in many circles. Winning is a great deodorant. You don't smell, I do, but a lot of people don't smell the stench of these corrupt individuals and parties if they win. But if they lose, maybe a little bit of that stink gets through. Although it didn't with Rachel, right? I mean, and that was the playbook, right? That was the Hillary Clinton playbook, right? Okay, we lost, so we didn't lose because our policies were bad. We didn't lose because people don't think much of us, think we have a bad character, and with good reason. We lost because of the Russians. We lost because of collusion, right? So we don't want that deodorant. We don't want people looking at us and thinking maybe you don't smell that good because you lost. Win or lose, she doesn't smell very good. And of course, neither does Trump, and neither does Biden. So it's time to move on, folks. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, but now that I'm grown, it's time to put away childish things. I don't see that happening. Talk about childish things. The reaction, the childishness, the reaction to the conviction, was so immature. It's like, what are we, in high school? Like the giddiness, the glee. This is not an occasion for joy. It's a shame. Not because Trump was not because he was convicted, not because he did. That's the shame, is that we have a political system that offers us, that provides us with the chance to vote for two such compromised, such unacceptably bad choices. And that's what we should be lamenting, not writing funny ha comics. Oh, it's over, ha. Look, we finally beat him. We beat him. We kicked his ass. Come on. What is this, a basketball game? This is a country. Here's another delicious 34, because there were 34 counts and he was convicted on all of them. This is a former president, maybe the next president. By the way, do these convictions hurt him? Are they going to make it less likely he'll be your next president, our next president? 240-242-5646. Oh, yeah, and don't forget, please click subscribe now. Really want to get your thoughts. 240-242-5646 to join me. Oh, I should look in the chat, right? Because I think it says 0. I think I can pop it out. See, I've had trouble with that chat. Let me pop it out and see if there's anybody chatting in there. I don't see any right now, so there it is. And again, yeah, you can call me. This is why I really feel like I got nowhere. Politics should be. No, and I mean should, right? Because I know there's no shoulds, and And people say, well, I should do this or I should do that. And I'm like, do what you want, right? As long as you don't hurt anybody. Sometimes you should do things, right? You should take your mother out for Mother's Day, right? I mean, there's things we should do, right? I mean, even if you don't really want to, you should do them. I'm not saying I don't want to take my mother out for Mother's Day. I'm saying, but even there are times when you might not really want to do something, but you do it. You may not want to cook dinner for your spouse. But if she's been working really hard all week and she'd love to come home to a nice home-cooked meal and you haven't been, or I haven't been, then yes, I should make dinner for my wife, even if I don't really feel like it. But sometimes we do things we shouldn't do, we should do. Or we don't do things because we shouldn't do them. So one thing about politics is it should be about policy, about programs, about electing somebody not just whose values mirror your own, but who will govern in a manner that extols your values, that exemplifies your values. So if you're somebody whose values include some kind of racial justice, some belief that people should not be judged by the color of their skin in terms of their outcome, but rather they should be viewed as individuals based on their actions, based on how, good or bad they are as people. If that's what you believe, then you would elect somebody who's going to govern in a manner consistent with that value system, like an LBJ who did his utmost and successfully to pass civil rights legislation. I mean, it's really not that complicated. So that's what politics should be. But it clearly isn't. It's all a game now of gotcha. And, my side versus yours is like sports, right? Like when I choose a basketball team or a football team to root for, I like the players. I think they're exciting. I like this. I like that. I watch. I don't make a decision. I mean, it could be if a player's, known to be a really bad guy. Nasty, abusive, right? I'm not going to root for them. I don't like to see that. So there is some of that. But basically it's like, okay, well, I live in this city, so I root for this team, or I like the way this player plays, or what have you. So I went to this college. I've got a shirt that says Ohio State on it, so I'm going to root for Ohio State. That's fine when it comes to sports. That's not fine when it comes to politics. It should be which of these choices that I have, and I say should, which of these choices that I have is going to govern in a way that's consistent with my values. And if you look, and that's not what we do. We don't make that. When I have these conversations with people about voting, it's like, oh, how could you support Trump? And I'm like, I don't support him at all. What are you talking about? Well, you're criticizing Biden, so I support Trump. No, I'm about policy. Biden's policies are really, really, really bad. They've caused a lot of harm. Period. End of story. Regardless of Trump's policies, Biden's are bad. No, I'm not voting for Trump either. But this is what I believe very, very firmly, strongly politics should be all about. It shouldn't be about, oh, look at these tiny hands. Oh, we can't even put handcuffs on him because his hands are so small. Okay, I mean, does that really, I mean, isn't that a little beneath the New Yorker? I think it kind of is. Here's another one. This really reflects, I think, how we've rock bottomed out. So, and again, this is why it's not, politics in this country now is not what it should be. And maybe you could say it's all social media, and a lot of it is social media. I won't deny it. This is what it's done to us. So, oh, look, She's so happy. That bad guy who beat her, who cheated, he got the Russians involved. And now called her Crooked Hillary. Oh my God, how awful. He called her Crooked Hillary. How could he do that? And now look, Obama and Biden are just, I mean, these are three really bad people. These are three people who've done really awful things, whose policies have set us back, who have made things worse. And we're sort of, you know, and we on some on the left are like embracing them and saying how wonderful they are. Again, it makes no sense. It only makes sense because it's what corporate media wants. It's what the parties want. They want you to choose up sides, to just say, okay, Trump bad. Anyone else who's against him must be good. And that has led us directly to where we are. Hottest years ever. Planet burning up. Genocide in Gaza. Endless war in Ukraine. A bitter, angry country that's a seething cauldron. That's where we are. Can we move past it? I urge you, I implore you, please move past it. And just so that you might possibly see why what we're doing now doesn't work, here are some of those same people. Okay? They're all smiley and happy. Why wouldn't they be? They're all super rich, glamorous. Of course, they're all on the same side. And then now they hate each other because they were both fighting for one plum. You know, one giant prize that you'll never get. We're so off track as a country. And this kind of excitement, this joy at a former president's comeuppance, I just can't feel good about that. I can't feel like it reflects well on us as a country. This is a good, this is an excellent, I want to say, this really 100% on this. And when I read this, I thought, why didn't I see more of this person? Would I have supported her? Possibly. If she had said this. And maybe she did. You know, I may have missed it. But there's the Democratic candidate. If someone's going to be put on trial, it would rather have been Bush or Cheney for purposely lying us into war that killed 1 million Iraqis, thousands of Americans. Don't forget the torture. Don't forget the torture too there, Marianne. So spot on point, 100%. What Cheney Bush did was so much worse, right? I mean, what Trump did, look, was so much worse than having his flunky give money to a woman he had an affair with so she wouldn't talk, hush money. That's not great. I'm not defending it at all. You know, it's sleazy. It's low rent. He's a scuzz, of course. It's not on a par with killing over 1 million people and torturing people and defending it. They're not the same. They're not on the same level of badness. And Marianne gets this. I don't know why so many others seem not to get it. Perfect example. You know, I've debated on this program who's the worst president. Like, Trump's not even close, right? And people think, oh, he's so bad, he's so bad. How can you even say that? Even if maybe he really isn't the worst, but you shouldn't say he's not the worst because people might vote for him. So the historians, apparently some historical society, more like hysterical society, just identify Trump as the worst president of all time in American history. Well, all time is because it's American history. There's only American presidents. Come on, man. Come on. Not even close. No, please. There's no secret bombing of Cambodia. There's no destroying a ongoing democracy, Chile, and installing a strongman, Pinochet, which, by the way, led to hundreds of thousands of deaths, if not murders, by Pinochet. CIA accomplishing that, by the way. Go see Missing Castigaras. There's no Trail of Tears. Trump is not the worst president. And Marianne Williamson gets this. And if she had been making this point, I don't know, maybe I would have been inclined to consider voting for her in the Democrat primary, but I wasn't. And there's Triple G. Glad you're watching, Triple G. Appreciate it. Hell, don't you see Orange Man equals bad? Checkmate. Yes, I know. That's right. I know. You want to win, right? When I play chess, I want to win. And I lose a lot. It pisses me off, and I'm angry and upset about it. And I think a lot of Democrats, they're like, well, my team is the Democrats. Trump is the other team. I hate it when he wins. So he lost. He lost. Checkmate. Let's see if we can get to a few more comments. Yeah. So on the social media there, the Facebook, got into it. Some people that I like, I'm friends with. I try to not be too confrontational. Sometimes most of the time, all the time I fail at that endeavor. But this is another meme we're seeing out there. Obviously about Trump. The guy who cheated on wife 1 with wife 2, I guess that was what, Ivana, Marla. Then he cheated on Marla with, did he? I didn't know that. I thought he had divorced Marla Maples by Melania, but maybe not. And then he cheats on 3 with Stormy Daniels. By the way, she's always so dismissive, right? A porn star. I feel like don't you think that's pretty sexist, the way Stormy Daniels is identified as a, quote, porn star? Like, let's say that she was a lawyer, right? Let's say that Stormy Daniels was a lawyer. Would you write and cheat on wife number 3 with a lawyer? You probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't, because we don't really generally define people by their profession. And I know lawyer's pretty sleazy, and you don't really want to say a lawyer. It's kind of putting them down, right? It's like a used car salesperson. But let's say she was like a WNBA basketball star. So that's like something a little more, I think, admirable. Would you say and cheat on wife number 3 with a basketball star? You probably wouldn't. They use the term porn star in these kinds of memes to put down Stormy Daniels. It's sexist. It's wrong-headed. That's how she made a living. She didn't hurt anybody. Well, I don't think she should have had an affair with Donald Trump. I mean, that's, he's a married man. I get he's the one who was cheating on Melania, but still, I think you should, not, I don't think people should be playing around other people's gardens, right? Let me put it that way. So that's where I am with that. But, it's obviously worse what Trump did. He betrayed Melania, his wife, who I guess had just had Barron or was pregnant with Barron. I'm not sure. So that's, bad. And what Stormy Daniels did wasn't great either. But the way she's so dismissively identified by that term is very inappropriate, very wrong-headed. So there's the woman shrugging. How could all these evangelicals support Trump? Well, you missed the point in that article, in that comment, because people vote based on policy. They vote, look, even if you say, well, the policies that Trump has pursued are ones that a lot of evangelicals support, right? They support keeping the borders completely blocked off. They might say, well, Trump himself is a cheater, but if he's for banning abortion, or at least he's more for it, then the other guy will support him because his policies align more closely with what we believe in. And I think the Democrats make such a terrible error when they refuse to focus on policy. And after all, Trump talks a lot about policy. Tariffs. He's always calling for tariffs. That's a policy. That's a really important policy that makes a big difference in people's lives. Democrats don't do that very much. They're apologetic for their policies instead of strongly arguing them. So I responded to that meme of the, the woman shrugging her shoulders and asking how could this, guy who cheats on his wife and has an affair with Stormy Daniels, he's such a bad guy, why would anyone support him? So my response is because because it's so stupid. It's such a dumb meme. It doesn't work. So because Trump is a sleazebag, vote for the guy flirting with a hot war with Russia, right? Because he's going to tell Zelensky, go ahead, start sending missiles over there, start killing Russians. So my response, because Trump is a sleazebag, vote for the guy flirting with a hot war with Russia and supporting genocide in Gaza. And I'm hard pass. I'm voting green. And notice, I'm not saying I'm voting for Trump, right? No. But I'm not going to vote for this guy either. And that excited a lot of animus, anger, ire. And so here's from one commenter. Pretty loose with the word genocide. You want Trump and Putin to redraw the map of Europe. Who do you think will pick the western borders? I'm like, really? This is your response? Well, I'm certainly not loose with the term genocide. I had said in an earlier post, you didn't see it, that I didn't think what Putin was doing, because I said, well, you're critical of Israel and they're committing genocide, but you're not critical of Russia and they're committing genocide, and Russia's committing genocide in Ukraine. What about that? I'm like, well, we're not supporting what Russia's doing, and they're not committing genocide. But if your argument is we need to fight the genocidal menace, which you claim is Putin, then by your logic, you need to be supporting a war with Israel, which, by the way, is much more justified. I don't think we should go to war with Israel, but I think we should stick our troops. Well, they wouldn't go to war with us. We need to stick our troops between the Israeli military and the Gazans they're trying to kill. So I wasn't loose with the word genocide and I'll give you the response, I think, in a moment. But it's such a non sequitur. Whoever said Trump and Putin are supposed to, and by the way, but Putin, really? Come on. Are to redraw the map of Europe? No. I at no point did I say that. What I said is that we should stop or not engage in a hot proxy war with Russia. We shouldn't start World War III. We should be pushing for peace. And yes, the map should be the product of negotiations, which we and Western Europe and Russia and Ukraine are all involved. So really, again, not useful. Who do you think will pick the western borders? So Russia can't even overrun Ukraine. This idea that somehow they're going to take over is so ridiculous. It's absurd. They just, look, again, it's realpolitik. I don't always like realpolitik because I think we don't want to forget the human costs. But the bottom line is Putin wants a buffer between Russia and the West. And it's legitimate. He has legitimate reason for wanting that. Perfectly understandable. We need to work with him on that. And at the same time, work to make sure that the people who live in that region, in that buffer region, are protected as best we possibly can. Right now, they're not protected. Right now, they're being killed. Right now, their land is being laid waste. That's not helpful. That's harmful. That's bad. Back to my quote real quick. So because Trump is a sleazebag, vote for the guy floating with a war in Russia and supporting genocide, hard pass, count me out. So the response was from another poster, and you can see I don't identify who they are. But they can call in if they're watching, 240-283-7262. Love to hear from them or you. Complicit in this is a response to what I wrote. Complicit in preserving freedom and democracy, count me in. We don't have, what are you talking about? Again, these false, choices. Somehow if you support Biden, you're preserving freedom and democracy. That's the argument. There isn't even going to be, well, let me just show the friggin' slide. This is your freedom and democracy. DNC to virtually nominate Biden Harris. So there's not even going to be a real convention because they're just too worried about that messy democracy thing where voters come together and delegates and electors come together, and they're not, a lot of them aren't happy. Not happy at all with Joe Biden. So that's, I don't call that democracy. We're not living in any democracy that I'm aware of. I'll talk a little bit more about that maybe, but I want to just move on quickly. So the question, though, that I posed, right, was how Trump's guilty verdict will impact the 2024 election. And you can see that at least those who don't like Trump are excited. Maybe there's a little wind in their sails. Maybe they'll go out there and campaign more aggressively for Biden, I guess. Certainly there's excitement about the conviction, the guilty verdict. But according to 538, don't get too excited. Trump may lose some support, but the drop could be temporary. So I'll give away the store. I think this is bad news for Trump. I mean, beyond it sucks to be convicted, obviously, and he might go to jail. I don't see how this doesn't hurt him. I'm not saying, it's over like that fat lady singing, but it's gonna impact. I think people are going to absolutely think twice before voting for somebody who's been convicted. And what he did is absolutely sleazy. And he didn't report it because he didn't want the electorate to know when he was running. It looked really bad. 538 makes these points. So there's some evidence from polls that the conviction could hurt Trump. 76% of Trump supporters said they would support Trump regardless. 24 said these are Trump supporters. They might reconsider their support if he was convicted. All right. Well, obviously, if he loses 24% of his voters, he's going to lose. And then another poll says 25% of voters say the guilty verdict would make them less likely to vote for Trump. So it would seem pretty bad news for Trump. But not so fast as 538. And they give you another, we'll get to that, not so fast a response to that, but just some other polling, which makes it look really bad for Trump. Pre-conviction polls showed, and there's 3 of them, Leger, Marquette Law, and YouGov, and they all show a significant shift to, or a shift away from Trump if Biden, a shift away from Trump if he's convicted, a shift to Biden. I don't see how that's not really bad news for Trump. It just is. It just is. Now, they explain, okay, so Rakich at 538 gives you this explanation. Just because people might say they're not going to vote for Trump doesn't mean they're going to vote for Biden. Okay, it doesn't really matter. They don't have to vote for Biden to help him. If they don't vote for Trump, then it helps Biden, right? I mean, if they vote for anyone but Trump, and they were going to vote for Trump, it helps Biden. It doesn't help him as much as if they vote for Biden, but it doesn't help. It hurts Trump. He's got to get all those votes to win. He's got to get the plurality in enough states. Some of those voters either stay home or they vote for the Libertarian. They vote for Kennedy, right? He is a legitimate name for people. RFK Jr. He's anti-vax. He's super pro-Israel. That could hurt Trump a little bit. So I don't see any world where this doesn't hurt Trump. Now, 538 says that, people only said they might reconsider voting for Trump, not that they're not going to vote for Trump, and that because they're not going to vote for Biden, they might well go back to Trump. And of course that's true, and some probably will. But any erosion of support is significant. The race is close. Battleground states are close. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are close. And then they say at the end there, I didn't highlight this, but plenty of time for Trump to spin a narrative that helps voters overcome any hangups about voting for a convicted felon, or plenty of time for people to digest this and start saying, well, what really happened? Why was he convicted? And what else is out there? What other shoes are going to drop? Because we know there's other charges, other cases against him, other court cases. I don't know any world where this doesn't hurt Donald Trump. So, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and I said, look, I don't care who wins. I'm not for Biden. To me, they're both equally bad. Genocide Joe, can't support him. But I do think this is going to help him. And it's binary, because if it hurts Trump, it helps Biden. So, yeah, if you hate Trump, I get why you're happy. If that's your goal, if your goal is to defeat Trump, if your goal isn't a fair society, a just society, a society where everyone has enough, no one has too much, a society where we're not complicit in genocide, then I don't see why you'd be particularly happy about this news, because it doesn't mean we're going to get a president who's going to make things better for people. But if you are motivated by just defeating the other guy, winning, owning the cons, owning those working class dummies who don't know what's good for them and vote for the wrong guy, if that's what you care about, yeah, I can see why you'd be happy. I'm not saying this Trump's going to win. He might not. But this helps him. This helps Biden. What did I say? I said that totally wrong. I'm not saying Biden will win. I'm not saying Trump will lose. But this definitely hurts Trump. There can be no doubt about that. And I understand the circle the wagon mentality, and sure, there'll be some of that. But the people who are going to circle the wagons around Trump already were there. It's not, I just don't see more, people who weren't already going to vote for Trump or already support Trump getting excited to vote for the guy who got convicted. And plus, it's kind of like, in a way, the nature of the charges, I always felt made the case look kind of bad, like it made it look really partisan and political. But in another way, I think people think, well, what really happened? And they start thinking maybe there's no smoke without fire. Start to really think this isn't good. This is a sleazy, low-rent guy, and we don't want him to be president. We'll see what happens, but my take, which could be completely wrong, is this is pretty bad news for the Donald. All right, I was gonna play. I told you Nichols and Brianna Joy Gray, but you know what? I don't feel like it. It's getting late. It's Friday. I don't really want to go too long. I do want to respond to one of my most loyal viewers from gosh knows how long. He's been, it is a he, has been there for me. So we had a back and forth about the fossil fuels tax. And I got kind of irritated because I felt, and I feel, but there's some clarification here that this critic of mine was being a little picky-uni, and I see this all the time, and people looking to find fault with a solution without proposing one. So I just said, it's obvious you're not persuadable. And then he quotes me back with my quote, which is, you remain adamant that we cannot use pricing mechanisms to disincentivize consumption. Right, because taxes is a pricing mechanism. It raises the price directly of the commodity. You put $1 tax, it goes $1 more than it was before you put the tax. Now, that's not exactly correct, because when you tax a commodity, the producer will reduce their price just a little bit. So a $1 tax would maybe lead to a 90-cent price hike. But it's without question a pricing mechanism. So the response was, no, it's not true. That's never true. Don't mischaracterize what I'm saying. and that's ironic because I was criticizing others for mischaracterizing my view. But I appreciate the clarification. What I'm saying is that a contrived FFT, fossil fuel tax rebate system, is going to have fairness flaws. And this goes to that whole issue where you take the revenues that you collect and you return it to the people. I mean, everything has fairness flaws. Therefore, I wish to combine time with your artificial imposition of market forces, time that you don't think we have. Well, that's exactly right. I don't think we have it. We have hard on the heels of the hottest year ever, and it's going to be the hottest year again this year. So yeah, I don't think we have time. You look at Canada, the wildfires are back. We can see the direct harm caused by the rising seas. More flooding. More land that's desertified now. I mean, it's clear. You're right, I don't think we do. But the response is, I don't think that adding time, ultimately a decade or two, which is because the commoner wants to put that tax on very, very slowly. Like I'm talking $10. He's talking, a quarter, 50 cents, a dollar. Ultimately, a decade or two in reality slows down the conversion process as much as you think. That's because the economy will only support converting our energy infrastructure so fast without putting our nation and perhaps the world into a counterproductive economic tailspin. Okay, that's possible. That's plausible. Because what the FFT does is it does redistribute money, but if the price gets too high, there won't be alternatives available if there aren't alternatives that are available or that are affordable, right? Because yes, you buy you might buy solar, but if solar is really expensive, it's just cheaper than oil and gas, and the reason it's cheaper is because oil and gas have a $10 tariff added onto them, a $10 excise tax per gallon or per British thermal unit, then the costs of energy are still going to be greater. So it is true. If energy costs rise very significantly, we could see the world go into this economic collapse. And so that's why he supports the slowly increasing FFT. All right, I understand the argument. I get it. I'm not saying it's wrong. Well, I am saying it's wrong for a couple of reasons. One, I do think it makes a difference because we're at that point where we're already over the 1.5 degree Celsius rise over pre-industrial levels, which the Paris Accords told us, Paris Agreements told us is really, really bad. And we've already sailed through that earlier than was predicted, and we're seeing terrible implications. So I think we don't have the time. But I also challenge the fear, the notion that this could cause. I'm not saying it couldn't, but I challenge the notion that this is a likely outcome that is a counterproductive economic tailspin. And here's why: we already are generating a tremendous amount of clean green energy. People have already demonstrated an ability to cut back on consumption. The resources are there. We already are making electric cars, and we can generate clean green electric energy. So I get this could cause a slowdown. I think it would cause a slowdown. I agree with that. But everything else is going to cause slowdowns too. Flooding causes slowdowns too. Flooding is inefficient. Forest fires are inefficient. Drought is inefficient. I think we have to do something right now, and we have to do something significant, substantial, that will move the goalposts immediately. And on that note, I wish you a great weekend. Thank you all who are staying loyal to me. And the best thing you can do, besides, obviously, you can like, you can subscribe. I was going to say the best thing, hey, call in when you get a chance. If you're watching, if you see the pop-up come up and say, hey, how's live? Check it out. And, pick up the blower and give me a call. I'll be back Monday. It'll be a Monday with Arlen. Have a great weekend.